Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. It is June 15th. It is we're rolling into summer. School is out pretty much around the world. And it's been a really amazing kind of time in the Web3 asset class. We're seeing major innovations, and we're also seeing major setbacks in regards to regulation, both in the US, but also regulation that's very positive abroad. Metaverses are moving forward and also scaling back. So it's really an amazing time of chaos. And this is a new format for us. So we're going to try really pushing into the panel approach a little bit more. So yWhales podcasts in the past have been very focused on singular companies, singular topics. And so this is going to be much more of a rapid fire this week in Web3 type issues. And so we're really excited to kind of see how this goes. I've got some amazing co-hosts. They'll introduce themselves as we kind of go along. But that being said, let's go ahead and dive just right into the first article, which is, and I think amazing when we talk about the concepts of, moving towards regulated cryptocurrencies. And so right off the bat, BlackRock, one of the largest fund managers around the world, is close to filing for a Bitcoin ETF. BlackRock, again, is plans to utilize his Coinbase custody. So Coinbase is actively being sued right now by the SEC, and BlackRock is prepared to launch an ETF utilizing Coinbase's on-chain offline storage custody, which is a huge and massive move. I really applaud this moves across the board. Siva, what's your thoughts as we start moving into kind of having more larger asset classes being managed by the people that already do this today?
Yeah, I think that's, when most people think what's going to be the next adoption event for crypto or Web3, a lot of people are very much focused on the retail, trader or the retail audience. And I have a very personal thesis that it's not the retail audiences in mass that are going to drive a lot of adoption. It's the institutions. It's the B2B frameworks, right? It's the nature, the rails that provide the large players in Web 2 and in traditional business today to onboard into Web 3. So this is really interesting because BlackRock is, quite famously one of the most famous financial institutions, but the most famous asset manager in the world, right? With how many billions of assets under management. And what's representative of that is if BlackRock can issue a Bitcoin ETF, and we'll talk about, Coinbase and if that's, the right platform of choice and what have you. But, Bitcoin ETF means that they have now exposed a financial instrument to financial institutions or TradFi institutions for them to, regulatory comply and enter into the crypto markets. And that's very powerful, right? Because financial institutions, banks, market makers, hedge funds, buy side, sell side, right now have a huge aversion, a huge risk, to enter these markets because, quite frankly, they might get fined. There is no regulatory clarity unless, most recently with MiCA in the EU, but especially within the US. If we enter into these markets and expose these instruments to our customers, are they legal? Are they compliant? Will we get fined?
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things is, BlackRock directly and indirectly touches over $8 trillion worth of assets around the world. Currently today, the entire cryptocurrency market cap is just hovering right over $1 trillion. So you're actually talking about a single institution that is 8 times larger than the entire cryptocurrency market. And what's really interesting to me is Bitcoin is right now, I think, the safest cryptocurrency to touch. The SEC is issued, relatively clear, like, hey, it's not a security, go ahead and play with it. But when you have a company this size and this much reach and this much influence saying, hey, we are starting to dabble into blockchain, that's a big deal because they can overnight, if they truly do adopt this technology and adopt that blockchain is a better way to store digital assets, you could see a 10x easy increase in the cryptocurrency market cap. Not by bringing on, new Ethereum or anything else. Yeah, 10, very small.
I think it's a 100x, right? And think about the nature of BlackRock, and this is why financial institutions and institutional traders are really going to be, in my perspective, that inflection point for adoption. BlackRock, with its network, right? If you understand capital markets, for the audience that doesn't, if you're someone like a BlackRock, you have within your financial network, you have direct relationships and connections to the largest custodians, like a BNY Mellon, or the largest market makers, right, like a Jane Street, or the largest institutions, like an HSBC or a Scotiabank or a Santander or a JP Morgan and Chase. So when you pull in a financial instrument and expose that to your client base or your customer base, you've already brought your, sphere of influence, your own personal financial network and ecosystem, an easier way to onboard into this new asset class. And that's powerful. As you mentioned before, BlackRock's assets under management eclipse the total market cap of the crypto market.
Yep.
So when you bring in and think about what they could do with that, right? They could, assets under management is not only, right, financial instruments in the form of spot or futures or derivatives or what have you. That's also actual assets under management, REITs, for high net worth collections. And when we start thinking about the next wave of Web3 and tokenization and digital assets and crypto-backed assets and digital issuance and them being considered securities and all that, it is just it's a big deal that BlackRock is entering it. Now, my personal thesis or my perspective on how they're doing it is probably not the right approach, right? They went with the safest at the time, right?
Yep.
Coinbase, but Coinbase is mired in a lot of current investigation by SEC. But Bitcoin ETFs are, the SEC has approved Bitcoin ETFs. 2 years ago, ProShares came in with an approved SEC approved. Gary Gensler signed off on it. The Bitcoin ETF, and we've got a couple of Bitcoin ETFs out there now.
Yeah, and and it's not like he's ever changed his mind before. So no. So it is,
Coinbase, it's risky for BlackRock because there is no regulatory framework in the US. And now they're going with Coinbase. So does that mean that they're going off of Coinbase's EU structure? And will they be able to expose those products to U.S. customers, or do they have to stay, to specific to EU customers? Can they, can they start exposing, other network players?
Well, I think the thing that even gets scarier is when you think about this is, we saw what happened with Gemini and Genesis and all these other ones, is that when there was true, like, hey, they got shut down, it became that those client funds were actually not client funds. They were considered, unaccredited investors. And so that's why suddenly I say, hey, BlackRock, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do non-custodial wallets and a lot of ways, go to Fireblocks, Coinbase, again, I'm sure there's a sweet deal amongst this. And by the way, they're using Coinbase's market matching engine for pricing. But when, unless you have a guaranteed slam dunk that you're going to win that, you're just kind of depositing money in a bank that's already under Department of Justice investigation. So very interesting. Jumping over to the next one. So Polygon unveils their 2.0 roadmap. And I think this is a really interesting one. So Polygon, which is the leading Ethereum scaling solution, has unveiled its 2.0 roadmap, detailing its plans to transform its ecosystem into a network of interconnected chains. This redesign will introduce new utility for the Matic token, pave the way for more community governance, and aims to establish Polygon as the quote-unquote value layer of the internet with unlimited scalability and unified liquidity as a ZK technology. This is really interesting to me. I think the Polygon is probably one of the, kind of most used side chains. It is, right now, if you go to OpenSeas, it's Ethereum, Solana, and Polygon. So they've been right there as kind of the main side chain of Ethereum. But I think this also really showcases how early we are. Like, when the leader of a subcategory in cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology is still on their 2.0 roadmap, I mean, that's early and new. And I love this concept that they're a bridge, they're a utility, they're connecting other chains, which is desperately needed. It still misses quite a bit of there's no governance, that's verified. So none of this is KYC AML'd. They're still very much on, hey, decentralization is enough. And they're dealing with quite a bit of being delisted on a number of exchanges due to our favorite buddy, Gary Gensler, again, labeling them as a security. Anyone else have any thoughts on this, or am I the only geek on this?
It's an interesting one. as you mentioned, we're still so early. You know, we're like, and we have these conversations all the time, right? It's very analogous to the late 90s, where every new technology company or every new .com company was vying for consumer attention to leverage their technology, whether that was, you know, your server stack, whether that was your data pipelines, whether that was, you know, AOL versus Netscape, right, down to that nature. You know, remember Ask Jeeves before Google and what have you.
Yep.
Everyone's trying to carve out their piece of the pie, so to speak. And Polygon has really came out of nowhere. I mean, they blew up on the scene within the past 2 years, and they came to the market with a really, it's a really innovative business strategy where they went with a partner model first. Hey, while everyone else is vying for consumer attention and kind of the retail and, you know, customer adoption of their technology, Polygon went straight to the major brands and approached them and said, hey, we will develop work for you free of cost, right? You can, as long as you as long as you agree to do it on Polygon and you publicly you know, expose via PR and marketing that you are aligning your Web3 strategy with Polygon. So now we've got companies like Starbucks that is building their entire loyalty rewards program on Polygon, right? Polygon is probably the single chain, you know, single layer, so to speak, right, or a compilation of layers that is got the most enterprise adoption outside of Hedera. And Hedera, I don't even want to call a chain because it's not technically, you know, there's no protocols. You know, that's a whole different topic. But and then Polygon came to market, you know, from a data privacy perspective. They were the ones to do a major ZK rollout, zero knowledge proofs, right? And that's a huge consideration when you're talking about data movement and, you know, metadata and how you can start to privatize data and how you can start to, on a decentralized ledger, right? How do you make sure that concepts like PII or GDPR, you know, are attested for on chain? Polygon led with that, right? And they did that from an enterprise perspective, an enterprise lens, right? So,
and it's going to take a long time for us to understand, you know, what are these protocols, you know, because it's, as you move from chain to chain to chain, you know, you have to wrap tokens, you have to have these really awkward bridges. So if Polygon really is, you know, trying to help bridge and interconnect other chains, it could bring some semblance of normalcy across these various protocols and, you know, more collaboration amongst the chains, which I believe there's going to be many more of over the next few decades, and they all have a place in the ecosystem. So next article, Salesforce, which again, these guys are acquisition machines. They deploy a gazillion products a year. Siva, you worked with them for a long time. So they put another $6 million into an AI-backed Web3 data platform, Mnemonic. Mnemonic is an AI-backed NFT data and analytics provider for enterprises and Web3 developers. This helps developers and enterprises create Web3 products and experiences more efficiently and reliably, and helps with spam detection to protect users from less reliable NFT collections. I think this is a huge win. I'm not a Salesforce fan by any means, but anytime you start to get the experience of true industry, they understand the laws, they understand the regulation, and they understand consumer protections. I think just having any amount of their legal departments overseeing the rollout of these large scale projects is just so needed. Sue, you talk about this all the time with how important it is for, you know, these NFT collections to be validated and verified.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about a major enterprise like Salesforce, just like BlackRock with the ETF and major brands on the Polygon chain, these large enterprises start to, number one, provide visibility to everyone about their credibility in the market. And it improves, I'll use the word credibility again, credibility of Web3, whether it's cryptocurrencies to NFTs, improves credibility in the market when you have these large enterprises signing on.
Yeah, it really, I mean, Siva, you see this as well as the managing director of solutions. I mean, there's so many people that are like, hey, I just want to make an NFT. I want to, you know, go ahead and build something. And there's so much more than just rolling it out and you know, firing off a button. Like there's so much back office work that people don't account for. And it takes somebody like Salesforce, like Sue just said, that even understands the process of deploying assets like this.
Yeah, for context, I was just for disclaimer, I was a reseller of Salesforce licenses. I did Salesforce implementations. Salesforce was a client of mine. I know the Salesforce tech stack very thoroughly, and knows what it takes to implement an enterprise environment. Salesforce, this is the most exciting news that I read all week, and it's a big deal because when you think of the nature of Fortune 1000s, statistics are made up and percentages are made up, but I would venture to guess that 85% of Fortune 1000s are running off of a Salesforce CRM backend, right? And that's important. When you think about enterprise data stacks and tech stacks, and when you think about introducing net new capabilities into an enterprise environment, it is very risky for an enterprise grade client, a Fortune, someone that is not even Fortune 1000, but anyone that's generating over 200 mil ARR, to go and say that, yeah, we are going to explore a new digital strategy with a no-code NFT platform or a native NFT platform that was just launched 3 months ago. And we have no connection of that data from those collections into our enterprise systems.
Yeah.
And that's something that is missing. And that is something Salesforce can immediately solve, right? Because if your entire lead gen strategy all the way to fulfillment to financial ops and passing through, and Salesforce's big key competitive advantage in the market is their expansive app ecosystem and their ability to integrate with other enterprise platforms. If you can connect from an NFT collection and actually start capturing data on the customer side and piping that in directly into your Salesforce CRM, it's a no-brainer that you're going to go and leverage Salesforce NFT platform. And that's where you're going to have to be fighting at that client size or at that client demographic is someone like a Salesforce NFT studio now. And it's hard. It's hard to compete against that because Web3 has a marketing problem. Web3 has an issue, especially with NFT projects and how many rug pulls and scams. And, even when some of the T's and C's, the terms and conditions of some of these NFT platforms, if you have a digital asset as a marketing department and now you pass that and upload that into this NFT platform, there is a big risk that we found out last year that a lot of brands experienced where that IP is not actually the brand's. It is the platform's IP because you deployed that on that platform. And there's a huge risk. And digital assets are IP. And that's one of the biggest concerns for marketing departments.
Yeah.
And that is something that is augmenting.
No, absolutely. And Abe, you're struggling with this right now is, who owns what and how do you even track back to the source of ownership or authenticity of these things?
Exactly. Yeah. Steve, I think you hit the nail on the head. This was exciting news for me too. And I think the data-driven access for companies is definitely the richness behind this as well. There is a lot of information you can gather from Web3 technologies, but at this time it's sort of clunky. It's sort of missing different pieces. It's hard to operate with. And if you can match it with a traditional platform like Salesforce, something where it already has a richness of data, and you just merge the two, like, man, you are a powerful force now with that information. You can really expand and accelerate how you start to engage with your client, with your clients and previous histories of your clients as well. So I think this is just fantastic news for us, especially as we're trying to accelerate businesses into the space.
Yeah, and Sue, I just want to point out one thing, and Sue, you'll help to put this in frame. To understand how early this is, look at the amount of dollars that are being invested into something as big as this by a company as large as Salesforce. $6 million. That's like less than their catering budget for for Employee Appreciation Day.
It's not even pocket change.
So,
and there's a layer here too. If you're an NFT platform or you're a Web3 platform that is promoting NFT capabilities, it is so hard from a customer acquisition strategy. Your customer acquisition costs are so high trying to acquire net new customers, right? Mm-hmm. But it is so easy for Salesforce, who's already captured and has got a market dominance of the largest companies of generating millions of ARR already within their platform, that they can go and you just say, hey, go add this module to your existing Salesforce subscription. And all it is you're just unlocking another feature within our modular ecosystem. As a brand, why would you not do that?
Totally.
It's so low risk compared to a full net new deployment into an enterprise ecosystem that there is a lot of, you can't even answer GDPR risk, right? Something as basic as that enterprises very much have to be concerned with.
Yeah, absolutely. The European Union has made significant strides towards enacting one of the world's first laws governing AI, with the main legislative branch approving the draft legislation. This law includes a blanket ban on the police use of live facial recognition technology in public places. I think that's a good thing. But more importantly, it also covers a wide range of technologies from automated medical diagnosis to AI-generated videos, deepfakes, and AI chatbots. The proposed law also bans emotional recognition at workplaces and schools. To tackle potential copyright infringement, AI developers will be required to publish all works used for training their bots and prove compliance with laws with heavy penalties. I think this is really early, and I'm sure that it's not going to go through like this, but I like the conversation. Abe, what's your reaction?
My reaction is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a platform that is doing generative AI images, and what they're doing is they're including metadata. It's almost like a stamp with every picture that's being generated to say that this is generated by AI technologies. And I can't remember which one it was, but I saw that probably about 3 weeks ago. It's an effort, right? I don't know if it's going to work, but it's an effort in the right direction. I think this speaks volumes from the regulatory side as well, because it's very dangerous if we do not figure this out right away.
Yeah. Sue, can you help frame why this is so important?
Well, there's been, this has been a topic in academia. What is artificial intelligence? What is intelligence? Should we make artificial intelligence more human-like? And what does that mean? And so when I talk about academics, right, it's from the philosophy of what is life to how do we actually deploy some of these tools to get work done? And I think one of the most fundamental questions is, are we going to substitute, is AI going to substitute for labor, thus creating all sorts of these doomsday scenarios around the gap between the rich and the poor and destruction of jobs and universal basic income, et cetera, et cetera? Or is it going to be used to complement so that we can do more than we ever thought we could do? And my answer is it will be both. And Jay, to your point, I think this begins a real dialogue about it. One of the articles said something like it was received positively. Well, yeah, it passed, 499 to 28 to something or whatever. But I don't think there's been much time for enterprises, academics, practitioners to actually comment on what this means as a creator, what this means if I'm an attorney, what this means if I'm an accountant. There's OpenAI has some features that most of us don't even know about, including some that can start to do financial analysis. So it's really, it's a conversation that we have to have, because using this, there's so much potential to use this for good and so much potential to not.
Yeah. And Siva, when we're watching the new conversation around AI regulation, and it's like, they're almost copying and pasting, like, how can we destroy the cryptocurrency industry and let's destroy the AI innovation, almost in the same, bucket. They're just like, oh, this is new, let's go ahead and suppress and regulate. What I fail to see is the studies, like, where's the reports on how they went and said, what are the positive effects? What are the negative effects? It just seems like they're throwing out a lot of stuff, based on negativity, without any real background into this.
Yeah, well, and I think that's just the nature of it's just so early. It's the Wild West, in the AI industry, just as it is in, the crypto industry. And I'm specifically saying the crypto industry, not Web3, because I view AI to be inclusive of Web3. And I believe blockchain is a core dependency of these AI large language models moving forward, because there is the strength of AI large language models are very much going to be rooted on the effectiveness of them to handle large data sets, which I think blockchains are perfectly capable of addressing over their cloud counterparts. But, I want to ignore AI as a topic for a second, and I want to really laud or applaud the EU here, because what we're seeing is now, I mean, it's what, the beginning of Q3 of 2023, and in the past quarter or 2 quarters, if we include now, the EU has led from the front now. They've come and they've passed a regulatory framework around digital and crypto assets in MiCA. And now they've taken the first stab at leading from the front and announcing a regulatory framework for their member states, which is included of 20 plus different countries, on how there should be some sort of regulatory clarity in this emerging industry. And everyone is kind of, you have the US, which is, hey, we're going to enforce by prosecution, right? And then you have other countries that are just saying we don't want to touch this, right? And you have a lot of geographies that just says we don't understand it well enough. We'll wait and let someone else lead, right? And the EU is raising their hand and saying, hey, we will provide clarity, some sort of guidance to create a fostering and nurturing environment to bring innovation into our borders. And we will work with you and provide clarity for you to make sure that you can still innovate and we can still explore these emerging technologies. And if there is some sort of risk in investor protections or consumer protections, we will work together, or we will provide that clarity for you, right? Whereas right now in the US, everyone is, I don't know what to do. I don't want to enter crypto right now. I don't want to get fined, or I don't want to get litigated against, or other part. There's a lot of
regulation through litigation is really a very poor way to kind of be managing these things right now. And it unfortunately seems like the current administration, that's the focus, and that's their choice. They're much smarter than I am, obviously. But as we move into AI, and there's going to be so many variations of AI. I mean, that's like saying real estate or saying vehicles, because there's going to be so many different flavors. And I don't think we're going to be able to have a one hammer fits all. And we really couldn't, even on Internet Web 1. There's various ways that we handle, copyright royalties. There's various ways we handle, people's interactions with each other and who owns, comments and features. Section 230 was designed very different than the Digital Millennial Copyright Act. And so I think it's going to be a big, portfolio of these things that we need. Jumping forward, Lens Protocol is showcasing us that we're not truly in a crypto winter. They just raised $15 million to continue development. For those people that aren't, 100% familiar with Lens Protocol, it enables user ownership and portability on the social web, reimagine it as a decentralized ecosystem of apps accessible through a universal profile. So profiles, activities, and followers are all seen as assets on decentralized storage and portable across applications. Why is this so important, Siva?
Yeah, so now is one of my opportunities to feel like a Web3 degen hipster, because within yWhales, we have been exploring Lens since last summer. And it's so awesome to know that, something that we were exploring is gaining significant traction. We were exploring it because we believe in a Web3, decentralized protocol for community management. And Lens is very much a protocol that is modular, and it's an environment and ecosystem to create some sort of ownership of data for the users to interact in some sort of social engagement, right? And so this is pretty important because the biggest problems right now with current social media is that users don't own any of their data, right? It's the platforms, it's the Facebooks, the Metas, it's the TikToks, it's Twitter, right? And where Lens is coming from is we have created a protocol where you, the content creator, still own the data, and you choose how that data is being leveraged by the platforms or the apps that are connecting with our protocol. And that's such a diametric shift, right? Because we literally, social media up until this point, from MySpace and Zanga and what have you, right? Up until current, which is TikTok is the dominator, we never owned our data. we never owned the content. And Lens has completely, inversed that. Now, where I think Lens fails, to be quite frank and to be quite honest, is they are very much building this for a Web3 audience. And that is not where the consumer attraction is going to be, right? It's going to be, what is a better experience for the normal, the traditional social media consumer.
Yeah. And
it's still too degen-y right now.
Yeah. And one of the things, Sue, you and I talk about this all the time. It's like you're one person and you should have one centralized source for yourself to manage your profile online versus you have a login to Facebook, you have a login at Twitter, you have a login to this, and that data never syncs. So if you update an email address or you update any of your profiles or add a new profile to it, like why is synchrony across the internet, not just Web3, so critical?
Well, I was really excited in the beginning on the Lens protocol, and I was an early adopter. I mean, do we all on this call have a .lens name? We have our name, .lens. I just don't, it's hard to use. How do we use it? And to your point, Jay, there's no way to sync up my .lens across my LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, et cetera, profiles. So I can't wait for the day that interoperability starts to occur.
And Abe, you're tackling a similar problem right now. You're trying to say, how do we validate institutions and validate people? It on the internet, Web3 is the best use case, but we're so early. I mean, we're so early in this that anyone can come up with a variety of responses, and there is no best practice.
There is a best practice, and I think now is the time where a lot of people are trying to come up with solutions, and we have to see what sticks. But the interoperability is going to be key, especially when we start talking about metaverses and NFTs that are coming out. I'm excited to bring up some points that some of the challenges are there too. Yeah.
Yep. So jumping forward, and this is, to me, I've been talking about this now, I think for two plus years. People have been telling me it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's been around forever. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to say that it is a big deal. 20 new countries have applied to join the BRICS Alliance. That is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. And the entire goal is to lessen international reliance on the US dollar. The BRICS Alliance is set to discuss membership processing for a host of countries during their upcoming summit in August. This is a direct attack on the US dollar. And quite simply, I don't believe that we've seen any type of response to this that would appropriate response from the U.S. and allied forces to basically say, hey, why are we giving this to China? Why are we allowing Russia just to go ahead and take over? These are what wars were fought and pushed over. And now we're just kind of backing away and saying, the U.S. dollar may or may not be needed. I'm really concerned about this one. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, Jay. I think, I do think it's a reasonable concern for the U.S. for sure. I was thinking about this recently, and the way that nations think about their future vision is totally different than the way we do. I think we're very short-sighted. I think we think in terms of the next election. So it's, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years from now. I think the Europeans and the Middle East, they think about 10, 15 years. Middle East is famously known for coming out with strategic national visions. So there's like a 2030, 2040, 2050 vision. But then if you think about how China operates, they think in hundreds of years. They are thinking long term. So, they have been quietly making interroads with a number of different countries in Asia and Africa. And they're just creating these pipelines. And they're doing it very quietly. They're not making a big fuss about it. But they are putting their tentacles out there in the world. And so, I don't think it's too far away from thinking this is not a challenge for us to sort of pay attention to.
I love that. And I also want to point out, I think that this is just as much of an attack on the SWIFT system as it is on the US dollar. Yeah. And I think that everyone likes to point out the US dollar, and there's good and bad and right or wrong. I can't, again, I'm not smart enough to argue that, but this is when sanctions are issued, it's through the SWIFT system, and, it's not always fair and it's not always just. When Russia invaded Ukraine, no one needs to, there's no argument here that was a horrible and horrendous thing to be done. But suddenly, Russian citizens who may be fully opposed to this, or their businesses, which had nothing to do or no justification of this, were suddenly shut off from the global economy with a single push of the button, because they shut off an entire country. And I don't know if anyone knows, but I don't think that Putin was going to take very kindly to a bunch of shop owners saying, "Hey, don't do this because now we can't process credit cards." Sue, how's kind of your lens on the way that we should be thinking about something like BRICS taking over? Is there possibly the good that we're not going to get away from a single source of or a single US dollar, or is this kind of just going to cause chaos?
Well, I mean, there's two schools of thought now, and one is, we need to start thinking about the time when the US dollar is not the world's reserve currency, right? And yet I've been in a small group meeting with Larry Summers, who, I think has done a really good job of objectively kind of crossing party lines and things through the last 24 months or so. And he's just dismissed that idea. So I'm not sure, I'm not qualified. That's way above my pay grade, but I know that every individual and every organization ought to be thinking about, I don't know, is it a currency strategy? I don't know what it is, but they need to be thinking about these global power structures shifting and what practically that will mean for them.
I think it just goes to show how powerful DeFi is going to be, and why it's so desperately needed. Is because there may be a time when your bank says we're not willing to give you that transaction, and you need to go to another source, and you can't wait weeks or months to go and KYC in another bank. It's like you're KYC'd, you've got a valid bank account, and you want to move your money, you want to change currencies, you want to do these.
Jay, can you read some of those country names again, just for curiosity's sake?
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Is BRICS.
And there's how many countries of that consortium or alliance?
Today, you'll test my, so the ones.
No, I mean, you can look it up real quick.
The new ones, right? The new applications.
Yeah, these are ones that already have, they do not have stable currencies. And so
and that's key. You just said it. So, I'm not qualified. I'm not an economist. I'm not, someone that is of academic nature, but, maybe this is where my Midwestern patriotism kind of bleeds through. But, this is my opinion, but I'm not really worried. Because if you think of the nature of the countries that have signed up or have stated, those are not traditionally stable economies. And think of the US dollar and the dominance it's had. The US dollar is so reliable that it is the default currency for all criminal activity. No one is going to other currencies. The only thing that has even disrupted the US dollar for criminal activities is cryptocurrency. And what do criminals convert back to? Fiat. And what do they convert back to? USD, right? It is so reliable, the US dollar, that almost every other country on this planet uses the US dollar as its baseline for their own currencies. To assemble a consortium of 20 plus countries that have an Eastern Hemisphere skew, of course there is an obligation to them for this power structure between the East and the West. It's happened literally, for the past 1,000 years, right? There has always been a struggle between the East and the West. And as the West has expanded, we've become the dominant economic players of the planet. And there is a struggle here right now, but Russia right now is not really a factor. Let's be serious, right? Russia.
I would argue that Russia right now has a more stable currency than the United States dollar does right now, because they're suffering from less inflation because they're actually oil producing versus the United States that's not oil producing at this time. So So it is, and this is, again, this is the concepts of when the U.S. stopped being an oil producing country. That's why we call the U.S. the petrodollar, is because we were the global execution venue for oil. Now, if Russia, who's one of the largest producers of oil, is settling their transactions not in U.S. dollars because they're not allowed to, with China, India, Saudi Arabia, and others. That's the biggest deal. It's not always what retail.
No one's settling against the ruble.
Oh, 100%. 100% it's happening. And China is also using the yen. And that's the biggest captures around the world. For decades, wars were fought. People have died for this. There's no justification for that. But now we're finally seeing that kind of pull back quite a bit. And I think it does lead to cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. That's why we're discussing it, is a very viable thing, because now there's settling going to be choice. Look, you're right, Siva. There is no second choice to the US dollar at this time. But as you start gathering, from 6 countries to 26 countries to 50 countries that are saying, we're done with the dollar, it's a slow erosion that leads to chaos. So I think it's a really good topic that we'll continue on with.
I think digital currencies or cryptocurrencies would be a more confident solution than any sort of Eastern currency before any other country goes to BRIC. Think about this. So much money moves through Western financial institutions. They run the world. That's just blatantly obvious, right? And, there's dark pools, shadow pools, in the East, but everything eventually gets pegged against the US dollar. We were just talking about this with BlackRock.
Yeah. No, I hope it continues. This is a good one.
I don't ever think those banks, those private markets, capital markets players would ever feel comfortable going towards a currency that is arisen out of this BRICS Alliance. They would rather make the purview or push towards digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, before the ruble or the yen becomes the default, currency that they have to adjust their business against.
We are absolutely going to find out over the next few years. I can say that much.
And
it's coming.
Interesting topic. Yeah,
it is.
And then maybe that's why the U.S. isn't really paying a lot of attention to it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not in our purview. Let's jump over to something a little bit lighter, and that is one of the largest fashion retailers in the world, Louis Vuitton, is launching NFTs. So this week, Louis Vuitton launched its new Treasury Trunks NFT collection, priced around $42,000. Each of these, they are soul-bound tokens, meaning that once it goes into a wallet, it cannot be moved. It's accompanied by an actual product that will come in the mail. So it is a digital twin. And the holders of these NFTs will have the opportunity to purchase more of these keys periodically, giving them access to exclusive Louis Vuitton designs and physical counterparts. Sue, this is as cool as it gets. This is as big of a brand as it gets. Like, the shots have been made, and they are saying not only is this an NFT that you get in your little wallet, there is real world value and utility. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And as much as we've had fear, uncertainty, and doubt, lots of FUD going on. Every week, another brand or 2 or 3 or 4 announces some sort of an initiative in the broadly defined Web3 arena. Tiffany launched a limited edition, if you remember, of CryptoPunks. Rimowa partnered with RTFKT for a luggage collection. And just for those dads of daughters and moms of daughters, Barbie, when the movie comes out, it's a huge movie release this summer, I think next month. The Barbie's going to be launching an NFT collection with Boss Beauties. So I think the message here is large enterprises are still looking to Web3 to create more engagement with customers and more personalized engagement with customers in all price ranges, from Tiffany and Louis Vuitton at the $40,000 plus level to NFTs released along with the Barbie movie.
You know what was so surprising to me on this one is it was so Web3-ish. Like we've been seeing such a thing where they're calling them digital collectibles. They're removing all aspects of wallets and self custody, and it's like they're like, nope, this is a full Web3. Here's NFTs. Here's attach your MetaMask wallet. Like they just went right back to what everyone was doing last year. And I don't know, if I agree with that, because I think it still precludes majority of the world who has no idea how to use Web3 technologies, from participating in something like this.
Well, and then they're also doing a digital twin, which is really interesting. So that term now will start to come into the consciousness of Americans, because digital twins, there's the consumer side and there's many industrial and enterprise applications for digital twins. So it's pretty exciting, the innovation and entrance into Web3 that we still see.
I think it's really intentional too. I really love LVMH for leaning into this and using the terminology. And I think it speaks to the audience that they're really trying to target. They're trying to target the people who are Web3 natives and who understand how this works. It's probably an indication of what they're going to bring out later on in the pipeline, right? So they want people who are comfortable with the technology to receive the future benefits that are coming along with this. And I love the fact that they use a trunk. There's a lot of history behind it. It's back in horse and buggy. This is the first thing they, was created during the 1800s. So there's a lot of history behind this iconic trunk. And I was really, it was really cool to see this launch.
Yeah.
Well, and then, right behind that, there's another article, which is LVMH, the multinational luxury goods conglomerate, has now established in conjunction a partnership with Epic Games. Those that remember Fortnite and Unreal Engine, you guys absolutely know who Epic Games are. And now there's a pipeline for consumer experiences. So the collaboration between these two will enable immersive product discovery experiences like virtual fitting rooms, fashion shows, augmented reality, and here it comes again, digital twins. It seems like there's a lot of movement on this, and we're really getting there. Siva, how hard is it to coordinate between big, massive brands like this when you're creating these kind of joint ventures?
Oh, insanely hard. I mean, there's silos within the brands themselves, right? But man, what LVMH is doing is just amazing. And what they're doing, every B2C or D2C brand should be taking note, because what they are doing is they are not going after even the millennial audience. They're not going after even the Abes and myself.
It's younger.
Right? It's right. Gen Z. Yeah. And what Gen Z their purchasing behavior right now is much more geared towards, hey, I don't have brand loyalty based off of I purchase good from you and you make a great product. It is now skewing towards what is the experience I receive as being a loyalist to your brand, right? Starbucks is killing this right now with their loyalty programs, right? And I've been testing and playing around with their Odyssey beta, and it's just amazing. But what LVMH is doing is saying, hey, when you buy one of our products, look at all of the utility or potential utility that's going to be accompanied with that. And it's great because it's going to lower their customer acquisition costs, because it's always cheaper to retain an existing customer than trying to acquire a new customer.
Steve, I'll back you up with a statistic that I read. 70% of Gen Zs consider the experience that they have with a brand is equal to or greater than the actual product that they're about to buy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You need to pause and think about that for a second if you're a retailer. It was that high.
Yeah.
So when you think about how long it takes to set up one of these deals and one of these partnerships, and this is one of those, like it's probably a year plus in the making, which is why these things were approved last year during the last bull run, and everything else. And Abe, I'd like to say that the world has changed a little bit because again, they chose to go with Unreal Engine. Yeah. Give a quick example of why that may not be the best go forward strategy today, because the world changed last week as far as.
It's not good to go with Unreal Engine
compared to Unity, and why is Unity a better choice today versus last week?
Well, it's hard because this changes really frequently, right? Unreal Engine just came out with a really cool tech where you can modify environments in just a click and drag type of way. So I'm going to get to this point later on, but there's a drive towards a co-creation economy when it comes to the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a competition between these Unities and these Unreal Engines to create tools that allow creators to build as part of the experience that you have with a company. I really think this is going to take off. I think there's an article that will bring up that show that very clearly with statistics. And I think there's going to be a drive towards the monetization for the creators to be a part of this experience. So, I hold back any bets on what tools, because you asked me this in 3 weeks, I might have a different answer for you, Jay.
Yeah, and I probably would have gone along with this being a little bit wider if it hadn't been for Apple releasing the Vision Pro, which is already fully integrated with Unity. And which is Unreal's, number one competitor. And the fact that we're still 6 months out, 6+ months out. In fact, we could be a year out. We don't even know, when they're actually going to launch the Vision Pro. But we do, I will say it is a game changer, and I'm sitting here. Here's Facebook's $1,500 Oculus, whatever the hell it is.
Flop.
Yeah, it's a complete flop. And Apple goes, hey, watch this. We're going to over double that price. But I do believe that Apple got a lot right. And I think for a Gen 1 product, I think it's going to really change the world. And so things like shopping and everything that LVMH wants to do, I think you're going to see another thing really quickly about them adopting somehow Unity, so that they can get the exact processes they're building. And again, this works with Unreal Engine, so they may be multi-platform. But I think this is going to be kind of that old school Apple, fight against Adobe Flash. And you're going to kind of have to say, like, whether you like them or love them or hate them, there's going to be some standards adoptions that's going to happen over here. And Metaverse is going to be the first one to get hit.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. So Adobe is also being a partner with this as well. So I think a lot of people are missing one thing with Apple products. The people who really love Apple products are designers, right? These are the people who are using the products. It's very smooth. It's just created for creators, essentially. And going back to the comment I just made 2-3 minutes ago, I really think a co-creation economy within the metaverse is really just going to nail it and enhance the experience. And so they've opened up the door for all the creators essentially to come in and start building on anything that we have available to you. And that's the accelerant right there.
Fabulous. So there was a big report on Metaverse. Metaverse was as big as you could. Zuckerberg blew about $11 billion on it. There was one point in time, if it was a Metaverse related token, at the minimum you would have had a return on over like a 12-month period would have been, like 15x. It was the hottest thing. And now they're all down, 80-90%. So the Metaverse report that came out, I thought was very, very good. It really talked about creating virtual economies, goods for consumer use. We were getting away from it exists and it's scarce and it just because it's there, it's rare and it should be expensive, to suddenly it's like, hey, products, services into virtual worlds. Sue, what's your kind of biggest hope for kind of the next iteration of metaverses?
What I loved about this particular report, and I'd be interested in what Siva and Abe have to say as well, is we kind of think of the metaverse as a consumer metaverse today, and this clearly moves us into a commercial and an industrial metaverse. And in some part, it will take the whatever headsets you're going to use. But I think you talked earlier, Jay, about the ability, even just on your normal websites, to try and close and things like that. Without those, it's, there is this spatiality around the internet in fashion, etc., that it's no longer flat. It's, maybe 3-dimensional, and then it becomes 4-dimensional once you go into the internet, into the metaverse.
But if I actually had a conversation with you like this, would this be acceptable? Like, so when we're talking about the concept of true immersion, like, would any of you take me seriously talking to you with this on my head?
Not today.
We're going to have cool looking glasses or contact lenses is what it's going to be.
Or just implant right into our brain. I mean, Elon's working on it. He's got Neuralink. Yeah. You just, go ahead and just put it into your spinal cord and there you go.
Yeah.
Deliver ads right to our brain. We don't even have to see them anymore.
Exactly.
Abe, what's the next big thing coming in metaverse? You think is it going to be related to the vision, or are we going to have something that comes faster?
I think so. I think the vision is really going to shape the industry moving forward, at least in the near term. I think a lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on the first version. And my initial reaction to that is, look at how the iPhone rolled out. Look at how the Apple Watch rolled out. No one really thought the first versions were great, but you judge the product on version 2, on version 3. Actually, you judge it on version 3 and 4. The first version is not really built for anybody. That's a test in the market, right? Version 2, all right, there's a few people who can gravitate towards that. When you get to version 3 and 4, you come out with your light edition, the different colors and different specs. You limit the amount of features, so then the price changes. I think that's what we should be judging the Apple Vision technologies or products for.
Love it. Love it. That's our hour. yWhales. This is the first episode of the new yWeb3 talk series. And I absolutely love it. Thank you, Sue, Siva, and Abe for co-hosting with me. That is June 15th this week in Web3. And we will see you guys next time.